Jean-Claude Van Damme finally speaks out about Steven Seagal, and what he says is shocking. It's even worse than anyone thought. For years, fans begged for answers, made guesses, and even hoped for a legendary on-screen reunion. Instead, they got something much more explosive. It all started with a mysterious Instagram post that seemed like peace, but it was just the calm before the storm. Now, after decades of tension, Van Damme has come forward with brutal honesty, and what he says changes everything you thought you knew about Seagal, their feud, and the truth behind Hollywood's biggest martial arts myth. During the silent war in the 1990s, if you went into a video rental shop, two names would almost jump out at you. Fans saw Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal as the heights of masculinity and the epitome of what it meant to be a real action hero. One had spinning kicks and tournament medals, and the other had sharp Aikido wrist locks and a stare colder than steel. But what fans didn't know at the time was that behind the high-octane fight scenes and slow-motion explosions, a much more personal and less choreographed feud was simmering. At first, there wasn't a clear conflict. No insults in public, there were no newspaper headlines, but if you paid close attention to the interviews and talk behind the scenes, you'd hear something strange. In press junkets and behind-the-scenes conversations, Steven Seagal would casually dismiss other martial artists, especially Van Damme. He would call Van Damme a dancer instead of a fighter, a jab at Van Damme's early ballet training meant to make fun of his fighting skills without ever naming him. It was subtle, even sneaky, but people in the industry picked up on the tone that Seagal didn't respect Van Damme as an actor or a martial artist. Van Damme, for his part, didn't say anything about it in public. Bloodsport kickboxer, universal soldier, time cop, he had real tournament experience and a reputation for training obsessively. His kicks weren't just for show, they were weapons. But even though there was silence, crew members and stunt coordinators would talk about how the two stars were never invited to the same events and how producers had to pick one or the other to avoid drama. It wasn't open warfare, but it wasn't peace either. Fans talked about the rivalry all the time, wondering who would win in a real fight and whether Seagal's Aikido was effective. Could Van Damme's speed beat his skill in real life? The argument spread to magazine covers, martial arts forums, and late-night talk shows. Everyone had an opinion and chose a side, but the two men stayed away from each other, never directly confronting each other until one night. But that's a story for another time. For now, it's important to understand that this wasn't just a personal rivalry, it was a clash of ideas. Van Damme stood for the flashy, high-energy type of tournament kickboxing and traditional martial arts that has been tested in fights. The grounded, strange air of Aikido fluid was represented by the Seagal. Not clear, kind of spiritual. Their on-screen personalities reflected how they acted in real life. Van Damme was charming, emotional, and often wore his heart on his sleeve, while Seagal was moody, distant, and always seemed to be hiding something just below the surface. Despite the tension, they stayed connected. Whenever Van Damme had a new hit, Seagal would come back with a role of his own. Whenever Seagal's movies got darker and more serious, Van Damme would add more emotional stories and vulnerability. It was like watching two artists paint on opposite sides of the same canvas. By the end of the decade, the tension between them wasn't just a Hollywood rumor, it was a Cold War that had been going on for years. It was a war of silence, a war of looks, and most of all, a war of pride. Behind all the interviews, roundhouse kicks, and stoic monologues, these weren't just movie stars, they were martial artists, and in their world, respect isn't given, it's earned. Soon, one of them would demand it the only way he knew how, the Stallone party incident. For years, the feud stayed quiet, but it was always there, simmering below the surface of Hollywood's fast-paced world. Then there was the party. It was supposed to be a casual, even celebratory get-together where legends can let loose and everyone leaves with a handshake or a story. It was hosted by Sylvester Stallone, the man who had brought many action heroes together under one roof in The Expendables. Years later, this party would go down as the night everything almost blew up. It was the late 1990s, and the golden age of muscle-bound one-liners was beginning to fade, but at Stallone's mansion, spirits were high and the guest list was long. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, and others were there. A movie barely shared a line and didn't show any respect for Jean-Claude. Most reports say that Van Damme and Steven Seagal started off with drinks, stories, and laughter. But then Seagal, as he had done before, started to talk about other people's work, not his own movies or accomplishments, according to Stallone. Seagal made fun of Van Damme's background by calling him overrated and questioning whether or not he was a real martial artist. Maybe he didn't think Van Damme would hear it or didn't care, but Van Damme did, and this time he wasn't going to keep quiet. What happened next has become Hollywood. Story of Van Damme fought Seagal in person, without any cameras or acting doubles. He didn't throw a punch, but instead told Seagal to take it outside and settle it like a real martial artist, according to Stallone. Seagal brushed him off and tried to laugh it off, but Van Damme didn't back down. He pushed Seagal again, telling him to back up what he said, and Seagal refused. He then left the party. This could have ended there, with a tense moment but nothing explosive, but Van Damme wasn't done. Later that night, he tracked Seagal down to a nearby nightclub where Seagal had gone to get out of the heat, and in front of shocked onlookers, he challenged him again. To fight again, some said it was staged, while others said it almost got physical. Stallone confirmed it years later, calling it one of the tensest fights he'd ever seen at a party. He said Van Damme was too strong, and Seagal didn't want anything to do with him. For Van Damme, this wasn't about showmanship, it was about honor. If someone questioned your discipline, training, or legitimacy, you defended it with proof, not trash talk. In his world, martial arts wasn't just choreography, it was a way of life. Seagal had broken a rule. But Seagal's refusal didn't hurt him in the end. Movie stars. Even though he kept making movies and building up his mysterious persona, the story stuck among martial arts purists and behind the scenes that Seagal not only walked away, but did so twice when someone actually wanted to fight Van Damme. Van Damme never bragged about the incident, did a press tour about it, or wrote it into a movie. He just let it happen and let the silence speak for itself. But the damage was done, the Cold War had gotten worse, and there was no going back. That night didn't settle the score, but it made one thing clear: this feud wasn't just for attention, it was personal, and Van Damme. The $20 million fight that never happened was just the beginning of the feud between Van Damme and Seagal. By the early 2000s, the feud had died down in public, but it was still very much alive behind closed doors. The party incident had become a cautionary tale in Hollywood, one of those stories that everyone said they heard from someone who was there. However, neither man had ever gone on the record to clear the air or settle the score, not in the ring, not on screen, not even in words. Just when it looked like the rivalry might fade into memory, something came up again. There was a big deal in an interview with The Telegraph in 2023. Van Damme casually revealed something that shocked the action movie community. He said he had been offered $20 million to fight Steven Seagal. This wasn't a movie fight, it was a real fight in Las Vegas at the Mirage Casino. It was supposed to be a high-profile martial arts showdown between two of the biggest names in the business. 2 black belts, 1 ring, no stunt doubles, but Steven turned down the offer. The statement hit like a punch to the gut, direct but impossible to miss. Delete fans didn't make up this rumor or fantasy, it was a real offer from Peter Guber, a major producer in the business. The money was real, the place was real, and Van Damme said yes, but Seagal never showed up. The media picked up the quote and ran with it. Fans couldn't believe it, some were shocked that the offer had even been made, while others couldn't believe it. YouTube feeds and forums were full of talk about it. Seagal turned down the $20 million offer, the fight of the decade, and walked away. Of course, people asked why Seagal didn't take the offer. Was it fear, ego, or something more planned? Because he didn't want to risk the image he had worked so hard to build over the years. Seagal had always relied more on mystery than on beating people in a ring, while Van Damme had actually fought in fights before. In the beginning of his career, Seagal did demos instead of fights. His Aikido training, while real, had never been put to the test in battle. There was also the matter of Seagal's pride. If he thought he was above that kind of show, maybe he thought the offer was beneath him. Or maybe he knew that a real fight would settle more than just a rivalry, it would reveal truths about both men's legacies that couldn't be undone. Van Damme didn't gloat when he won.